little bit of a change of pace, Muse, with the her. Actually, I used to wear my hair like this all the time. And then I don't know what happened. I decided to become unfun. And then, out of nowhere, I decided to bring fun back. Sounds like the birds agree. Look, I have something that I want to talk about, as I always do, that was brought about by a terrible, no good, terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day that I had last weekend. And that day, what happened essentially was I dove down the rabbit hole of reviews. Whee! And every artist knows you don't do that. Now, the reviews I was looking at were not reviews of my books. They were reviews of audiobooks that I narrated for other people. And there were a lot of them. And not all of them were bad. The majority of them were good. Actually, a vast majority of them were good. But there were some of them that were quite brutal. However, in their brutality, I learned something. I learned something I think is important for artists now. And I'm going to share that with you. It's not something that's particularly positive or optimistic. And quite frankly, it goes against every bit of training that I have. Let me explain. Today's consumers, people that read books, listen to audiobooks, listen to music, watch movies, go to the theater, go to the opera, go to dance. They've changed. They're not the same audiences and consumers that they once were. Now, what they want is they want to consume as much as they can, as quickly as they can. It's as simple as that. They want to binge watch all of their television shows. They want to read books as quickly as they can. They want to listen to music as quickly as they can. They want their theater productions to be shortened. Like 90 minutes is the most an audience can handle, an average audience. So they can get on to the next thing. Let that sink in for a second. Now, let me give you a little bit of insight into how I was trained. As an actor, I was trained at a time when it was our responsibility as artists to give the audience time to process things. I grew up, I think, in the last generation of actors who could not only understand what Harold Pinter was doing, but work within that framework. What Harold Pinter, if you don't know, Harold Pinter wrote a bunch of plays. And in his plays, he clearly indicates where there are pauses. And the pauses were for effect. The pauses weren't empty, they were filled with stuff. And the audience, all of the audiences would process. They would get what was in the pauses and process it, and it would become part of the story. Pauses. Well, today's audiences can't really handle Harold Pinter, nor can a lot of today's younger actors, because they don't know how to fill those moments. They don't know how to fill them. And that's an important skill to know, how to fill those moments of silence. John Cage was a composer. He wrote chance music. And one of the most famous pieces he ever wrote, I always get the name of the piece wrong. Like it's 4 minutes and 22 seconds, or 4 minutes and 33 seconds, or 3 minutes and 22 seconds, something like that. But what it is a piece of music wherein the performer comes out on stage, puts the music on the music stand, and sits there for the allotted amount of time that is given on the title of the piece of music. It's not silence. You might be thinking, oh my gosh, what's the point of that? It's just silence. It's not silence, though. It's the music. The music is all around you. It's the noise outside of the theater. It's the noise inside of the theater. It's the noise of the building, the noise of the audience moving, breathing. It's everything. Today's audiences, they can't handle that. People that listen to audiobooks, they want to get through them as fast as they can. They even have the ability to speed up the narration so they can get through them. There are speed readers out there. Everybody has known of speed readers for a very long time. And I'm not saying you can't speed read something and retain it. But the thing is, I was trained to breathe into the art, to allow those moments to have breath, to not just plow through the words, to give those words meaning and depth. And I do that in my writing. You can open up a page of my writing without reading a word. You can see the pace. You can see how I have written rhythm into the passages. You can see where things speed up and slow down. It's right there. You don't even have to read it. So when you're reading one of my books, you'll get to a period, you'll get to a small section where it's clipped, it's quick, it's fast. And that will be interspersed with sections where it slows down. And I do that for a reason. Because when it starts to slow down, that's when the reader needs to pay attention and process what's going on. You see? But the thing is consumers don't want to take the time to process. They just want to take it in, take it all in. Just take it all in. Give me as much as you can, as quickly as you can. It used to be, and I think, I'm not 100% certain of this because I haven't done any research, but I think that a part of the reason why this has happened is because of the VCR. Remember that? The VCR, video cassette recorder, which was then replaced by the DVD, the Blu-ray, and the DVR. But the VCR, what the VCR allowed us to do is record our shows, watch our shows, and then fast forward through the commercials. We had that button, that fast forward button that gave us power, that we could consume our shows faster. So a half an hour show was now 23 minutes. And we didn't have those awful commercial interruptions. But here's the thing. Back before we could fast forward the commercials, those commercials served a very important thing, very important service. Not just to sell a product. No, it wasn't just to sell a product. The commercials gave us a moment to process what we just saw and heard and to discuss it. While little Debbie was going on about her products, we could turn to each other and go, what did you think of that scene that we just saw? What about what that character said and did? And we could process it in real time. When you fast forward through the commercials, or there are no commercials at all, you just have to wait to the end of the episode and try to process everything. If they've even given you any time to let it all sink in. Sometimes when I sit down in front of the television and watch, I feel like I'm just being bombarded. That I am not given any time at all to appreciate what I've just seen or process it, take it in. I had a lot of friends back in undergraduate school that worked in the school's radio station. It was a classical radio station. Now, all of the DJs for that classical radio station were trained for a very specific thing. When a piece of classical music finished, this is great. When a piece of classical music finished, the DJs couldn't just jump into their spiel or throw on the next piece. They had to allow for a moment of silence. So Samuel Barber's Adagio for Strings would finish. That last heartbreaking note would ring out. And the DJ would remain silent. So the listener could finish processing what they heard. One of the greatest experiences on the stage that I've ever had was, I won't even say the show or the theater, but it was a production that I was in. It was a very moving, profound production. And almost every night, when the metaphorical curtain fell, the show was over, the audience remained silent. Even as we came out to take our curtain call, the audience was silent for a moment. And then, once that final moment had either sunk in or finished processing, they would then jump to their feet and applaud. Those moments are precious. Art, in all of its forms, is meant to touch us, to change us, and to entertain us. But when the only purpose is to consume it, and I'm not talking about purchasing it, I'm just talking about reading it, hearing it, watching it. When the only purpose of art is to consume it, we're missing out on the profundity of what it offers. We, as artists, this is my opinion here. So take it as such. But we, as artists, cannot cave to that level of consumerism wherein we forget our purpose and we forget to allow for those moments for an audience, for a reader, for a listener to process. If we do that, we remove the heart and soul from our art. And at that point, art is no longer art, it's just a product. And I'm not saying that the blame is on the consumer. The blame is, there really is no blame, to be honest. It's just how people have evolved. But it is my goal to try and help retrain consumers to allow themselves time to stop and enjoy. So the next time that you're reading a book, don't just blow through it. Give yourself, when you come across a passage that moves you, read it again. Stop and think about it. I have been in the middle of reading a book and come across something that was so moving and profound that I just said, I'm done reading this for now. I'm going to put it away for today because I have to let that sink in. I'll come back to it tomorrow after I've processed it. Instead of just blowing through it and possibly missing out on the true intention that the author had. Same thing with television, the same thing with music. That's all I got, Muse. Now I'm going to record something very similar to this, but through the eyes of an audiobook narrator. Isn't that fun? Whee! Anyway, Muse, thank you for listening to me. Thank you for all the wonderful ideas and just sticking by me all of these years. Because without you, I don't want to think about it. Anyway, art is awesome.